He said the devil gave him a belt. As soon as he fastened it, his bones would restructure amidst agonizing pain, his skin would sprout coarse gray fur, and he would transform into a bloodthirsty giant wolf. He looked up, smiling at the neighbors he once called brothers, and grinned. Last night, did you hear the screams coming from the forest?
Welcome back to Glitch Frequency. Today we're talking about werewolves.
We're going to take you across 4,000 years of history, from Sumerian clay tablets to the stakes of the Middle Ages, to unpack the collective fear hidden behind the full moon and rabies.
So the real mission for today's deep dive is basically to figure out why this one specific monster just, refuses to die.
Right, like why the werewolf?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have this massive stack of sources here. I mean, we're talking historical texts, medical journals.
Anthropological studies.
Yeah, all of it. And they all point to the werewolf being humanity's most enduring nightmare.
It really is.
Because it's not just a scary story you tell around a campfire.
Sure.
It's essentially a mirror reflecting 4 millennia of human anxiety and disease and social control.
And to really grasp the gravity of that, I want you to just step back in time for a second. Like, put yourself in the shoes of an early human.
Oh, man. Yeah. That's a terrifying thought.
Right. Just imagine a time when the flickering glow of your campfire was the literal boundary of your entire world.
Yeah.
Beyond that light is just the howling, terrifying dark of the wild.
Mm-hmm.
You hear a twig snap, the hair on your arms stands up, and you have to wonder, is it a hungry predator looking for an easy meal? Or is it a person you know?
Wow.
Like your neighbor, your brother, twisted by some unimaginable curse into something monstrous.
And, that specific terror of the wild creeping into our, domestic safe spaces, it goes back way further than you might think.
Oh, absolutely.
We can trace it directly to ancient Sumer around 4,000 years ago.
Right, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Exactly, which is arguably the oldest piece of literature we have.
Okay.
And there's this fleeting but incredibly dark detail in there.
Yeah, I remember that.
The goddess Ishtar takes a shepherd who had the misfortune of loving her, and she just turns him into a wolf.
And the sheer psychological cruelty of Ishtar's curse is what really makes it stand out to me.
Oh, totally.
She doesn't just change his physical form. She strips him of his place in the human hierarchy and leaves him to be torn apart by his own hunting hounds.
Oh, God, yeah.
Like, the very animals this shepherd raised, trained, and trusted to protect his flock become the instruments of his horrific death.
It's so visceral.
It perfectly encapsulates that ancient primal dread of the natural order just suddenly, violently turning against you.
Right, and that establishes a baseline fear. But the narrative eventually evolves from, a fickle god's revenge into a much more structured story of crime and punishment.
Yes, Greek mythology.
Exactly. If you look at Greek mythology, the werewolf becomes a direct consequence of crossing a moral line. You have King Lycaon of Arcadia.
Oh, King Lycan. He is basically the architect of his own destruction.
He really is. He decides he wants to test the omniscience of Zeus.
Which is a terrible idea.
Right. He thinks, if this god is all-knowing, he will know exactly what I feed him. So Lycaon commits the ultimate taboo.
He slaughters a human being.
Yeah. Often described in the text as a child, actually. He cooks the flesh and serves it to Zeus at a banquet.
Which has to be the most phenomenally arrogant gamble in mythological history.
Without a doubt.
And of course, Zeus immediately recognizes the human flesh.
Obviously.
In his rage, he doesn't just kill Lycaon. He completely obliterates his home and curses him to a fate worse than death.
Right.
The Roman poet Ovid gives us this incredibly visceral, gruesome account of the transformation. He describes Lycaon panicking as his fine royal robes literally melt into coarse, shaggy hair.
Oh, wow.
His arms twist and snap into legs. He tries to speak, but his voice just breaks into this terrifying, guttural howl.
And you know what the most chilling part of Ovid's description is?
What's that?
Lycaon retains his human mind.
Oh, God, really?
Yeah. His eyes remain exactly the same, red, fierce, full of bestial savagery.
Yeah.
So he is fully aware of the monster he has become.
That is terrifying.
It is. And this blood-soaked legend of King Lycaon is actually the direct origin of the term lycanthropy, which is, the clinical and mythological word for werewolfism.
Looking at these ancient texts, I'm just struck by how heavily they lean on the cannibalism aspect.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me wonder if these myths were essentially the ancient equivalent of a gruesome public service announcement.
A PSA against eating people.
Basically, You have early societies trying to establish civilization, and they need severe guardrails.
Right.
They're telling their people, if you give in to your basest, most taboo urges, you will forfeit your humanity and literally become a beast.
Yeah, the mythological function is absolutely about enforcing social boundaries through cautionary tales.
Exactly.
But the historical record actually takes that concept of the beastly other even further.
Oh.
Yeah. In the 5th century BCE, the historian Herodotus documented a nomadic Baltic tribe called the Nuri.
The Nuri.
Right. And he recorded that the surrounding civilizations firmly believed these people transformed into wolves for a few days every single year.
Wow.
Herodotus himself was pretty skeptical, but the anthropological mechanism here is fascinating.
How so?
Well, civilized societies constantly project their own darkest, repressed urges onto fringe, nomadic groups.
Oh, I see.
By labeling the outsiders as literal monsters, the society preserves its own sense of civilized superiority.
That makes total sense. So you have the werewolf acting as this sort of psychological container for everything early humans feared about the wild, the gods, and even each other.
Exactly.
But, digging into the sources, the werewolf wasn't just a single monolithic monster.
No, not at all.
Early lore actually divided the lycanthrope into 3 highly distinct psychological archetypes.
Based on human vulnerability and power.
Right. So the first of those archetypes is the victim.
The victim, yeah.
These are innocent souls who bear absolutely no guilt. They are cursed by spiteful deities, or bewitched by local hags, or just plagued by terrible cosmic misfortune. Their hearts and minds remain entirely human, but they are trapped inside a predator's body.
It's a tragic, heartbreaking reflection of the human fear of losing bodily autonomy.
Totally.
You can just imagine the psychological horror of being locked in this cycle of agony, yearning to reclaim your human life, but forced to hunt under the moonlight.
And then at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have the second archetype, the damned.
Right, King Lycanthropy is the poster child for this category.
Exactly. These are individuals who are violently stripped of their humanity as an eternal penance for forbidden sins.
Like cannibalism or murder.
Right. For them, the transformation is not an accident. It is the universe aggressively balancing the scales and punishing them for their depravity.
But then the third archetype is where the narrative just completely fractures.
Yes, because it introduces a concept where the wolf isn't feared at all.
Right.
Yeah.
The third archetype is the warrior.
I find this one absolutely fascinating. Some cultures didn't want to hide from the apex predator. They wanted to weaponize it.
Oh, definitely.
You look at ancient Norse traditions and you find the berserkers, which translates roughly to bear shirts, and their counterparts, the Ofednar.
The wolf coats.
Yes, the wolf coats. These warriors would literally don the pelts of wolves before stepping onto the battlefield.
And the psychology of the Ofednar is entirely about channeling power.
Right.
By wearing the skin of the beast, they believed they were entering a state of supernatural frenzy, like absorbing the animal's essence. They viewed the wolf's savagery not as a divine curse or loss of autonomy, but as a highly coveted military gift.
Exactly.
They basically bypassed the terror of the wild by physically embodying it to slaughter their enemies.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But that pagan reverence for the beast, it had an expiration date.
It really did.
As you transition out of antiquity and into the Middle Ages, the entire script gets rewritten.
Yeah. The armor of the wolf warrior is replaced by the iron fist of religion.
Because the rise of Christianity across Europe forced a massive paradigm shift.
Right. The church just could not tolerate these lingering pagan beliefs in shape-shifting warriors or cursed kings.
No, they couldn't.
So they systematically reclassified the werewolf. It went from a pagan myth to a demonic heresy.
That's a huge shift.
Huge. By the late 15th century, you see the publication of the Malleus Maleficarum, the infamous witch-hunting manual.
Right. The hammer of witches.
Exactly. It officially codified the theological stance that physical shape-shifting was an illusion, one created through a literal binding pact with the Christian devil.
And that specific theological shift is the spark that ignites what I like to call the Scarlet Trials.
Oh, the hysteria.
The werewolf hysteria of 16th century Europe was a complete bloodbath.
It was terrifying.
At the top of the show, we mentioned a man claiming the devil gave him a transforming belt.
Right.
That was a real person. Peter Stump, living in Germany in 1589.
Oh, the Stump case is brutal.
Under the most agonizing torture mechanisms of the era, he confessed to multiple murders, cannibalism, and incest.
And the authorities executed him in an unimaginably horrific way.
They did. And they displayed his severed head on a pole as a physical warning to the public.
And France was experiencing the exact same panic.
Right, the werewolf of Dole.
Yes, Gilles Garnier. He was burned at the stake for supposedly hunting children in the woods.
It's just so dark.
And these weren't isolated incidents. Tens of thousands of people across Europe were formally accused of lycanthropy during this era.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah. They represent a very real societal panic over beasts in human skin.
I just keep looking at that massive number of accusations and asking, what is the mechanism of this hysteria?
Why were they panicking?
Exactly. Why does an entire continent suddenly decide their neighbors are turning into wolves?
Well, you have to look at the socio-political pressure cooker of 16th century Europe.
Okay.
This was an era absolutely ravaged by the Little Ice Age.
Oh, right. The weather shifted.
Exactly, which caused severe famine, repeated outbreaks of plague, and intense religious wars following the Protestant Reformation.
So people were just constantly suffering.
Yes, human psychology under that level of extreme, relentless stress fractures.
That makes sense.
When crops fail year after year and children are starving, society desperately requires a scapegoat to make sense of the suffering.
And when society needs a scapegoat, it always falls on the marginalized.
Always.
Always.
The victims of these werewolf trials were overwhelmingly hermits, societal outsiders, beggars, or individuals with physical deformities who simply lived on the edges of the woods.
Just the most vulnerable people.
Exactly. The historical sources note that having unusual physical features, something as benign as eyebrows that met in the middle, a unibrow.
Wait, a unibrow?
Yes, a unibrow was considered genuine, admissible evidence of lycanthropy in a court of law.
That is insane.
The collective weight of societal paranoia just crushed the most vulnerable people in the population.
It is such a devastating chapter of human history.
It really is.
But before we leave the folklore behind, there is one critical thing to understand.
What's that?
The fear of the apex predator taking human form is not a purely European concept.
Oh, definitely not.
It adapts globally to whatever creature rules the local food chain.
Right.
If you look at folklore in Africa, you find deeply entrenched stories of war hyenas.
Mm-hmm.
In India, there are terrifying accounts of war tigers. In Japan, you see the mythology adapt into shape-shifting fox or cat spirits.
The specific animal changes, but the core psychological anxiety remains identical.
Exactly.
It proves that the fear of the boundary between civilization and the wild dissolving is a universal human trait. We project our fear of the dark onto the most dangerous predator in our immediate environment.
Speaking of adapting the narrative, there is one historical trial from Livonia, which is modern-day Latvia, in the year 1692, that completely shatters the mold.
Oh, Old Thighs. We have to talk about Old Thighs.
Yes.
The trial of Old Thighs is one of the most remarkable documents in the historical record.
It really is.
He was an elderly man who stood before the judges and freely, calmly confessed that he was a werewolf.
Just admitted it.
Just admitted it.
Yeah.
But he absolutely refused the church's narrative. He vehemently denied making any pact with the devil.
Instead of a demonic servant, he claimed he was a hound of God.
Right.
He testified that he and a whole pack of righteous werewolves would routinely descend into hell itself to violently battle witches and demons.
And the reason they were fighting the forces of darkness.
To ensure a good crop harvest for the community.
It's amazing.
He was claiming that werewolves were agents of divine agricultural justice.
And the judges were completely paralyzed by his testimony.
I bet they were.
These flipped the script on the purely evil definition of the beast, introducing this bizarre, heroic hue to the legend.
So what did they do to him?
They ultimately didn't execute him. They simply flogged him and banished him for superstition, primarily because the legal and theological framework of the time had no idea how to process a werewolf who claimed to be doing God's work.
I love that case because he's essentially framing himself as a medieval superhero.
He really is.
But if we strip away the magic belts, the demonic packs, and the divine agricultural warriors, we are left with a very grounded question.
Right.
What physical and environmental realities were our ancestors actually observing that birthed these specific myths?
Well, if magic isn't real, then the folklore has to be rooted in misinterpreted science and medicine.
Exactly.
Let's start with the brain. There is a documented psychiatric syndrome known as clinical lycanthropy.
Okay.
The Greek physician Marcellus actually observed and diagnosed this condition as early as the 2nd century.
Wow, that early.
Yeah. Patients suffering from this delusion genuinely believe their bodies are restructuring. They feel fangs growing, they run on all fours, howl, and often frequent cemeteries.
You put someone experiencing a severe psychotic break like that into a medieval village that already believes in demonic possession, and the myth basically writes itself. But the misinterpretations went far beyond psychiatric conditions. Our ancestors were also misreading profound physical mutations.
Right. The physical conditions are where the monster profile truly takes shape.
Yeah.
You have hypertrichosis, which is a rare genetic disorder, sometimes literally referred to as werewolf syndrome.
Because of the hair.
Right. It causes thick, coarse hair to grow uncontrollably over the entire face and body.
Mm-hmm.
But an even more compelling medical mechanism for the myth is a rare blood disorder called porphyria.
Porphyria is where the biology gets terrifyingly specific.
It really does.
The condition basically inhibits the body's ability to synthesize hemoglobin, which is a component of hemoglobin.
And the physical consequences of that failure are staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
Sufferers of severe porphyria can develop extreme photosensitivity. Sun exposure causes their skin to blister and scar.
Meaning they would naturally become nocturnal.
Exactly. Only venturing out after dark. Furthermore, the cellular damage from the sun can cause the skin around the mouth to tighten and the gums to recede, exposing the teeth.
Making them look abnormally long.
Like fangs, yeah. The condition can even turn the teeth and receding gums a striking reddish-pink color.
So you have a pale, nocturnal individual covered in thick hair with elongated teeth and bloody-looking gums.
It is the exact physical blueprint of the werewolf.
And the tragedy is that these were just intensely sick people suffering without modern medicine.
The medical tragedy really deepens when you look at the environmental factors, specifically the communal food supply and the local wildlife.
Right.
Which brings us to ergot and rabies.
Let's unpack the lethal rye. Because I was looking at the notes on the ergot fungus, and I was trying to figure out, how does moldy bread turn into a village-wide panic about giant wolves?
Right, it seems like a leap.
Yeah.
But the mechanism of ergot poisoning relies on the agricultural practices of the time.
Okay.
Ergot is a naturally occurring fungus that thrives on damp rye grain during unusually wet harvest seasons. When you consume it, the fungus produces psychoactive alkaloids that are chemically similar to LSD. Yeah. In a medieval village, everyone brings their grain to a central communal oven to bake their bread. If that rye harvest is infected with ergot, the entire village is poisoned simultaneously.
So you don't just have one person seeing things. You have a mass, synchronized outbreak of hallucinogenic poisoning.
Exactly.
Hundreds of people experiencing severe paranoia, muscle spasms, and terrifying shared visions of beasts stalking them in the woods.
It perfectly explains the sudden, localized spikes in werewolf sightings during cold, wet, famine-stricken years.
That is incredible.
But, hallucinations are still just visions. The terror of the werewolf was cemented by something far more tangible and deadly: rabies.
Rabies is the smoking gun of werewolf lore.
Oh, without a doubt.
It is a viral disease that perfectly mimics the folklore's mechanism of transmission. It is passed entirely through a bite.
And the virology of rabies is devastating. Once the virus enters the body through the saliva of an infected animal like a wild wolf, it aggressively attacks the central nervous system.
Right.
As the brain swells, the victim suffers from severe hydrophobia, meaning they cannot swallow water, causing them to literally froth at the mouth.
And then the aggression starts.
Exactly. The virus induces uncontrollable, violent aggression, compelling the victim to bite others, continuing the cycle of infection.
Put yourself in the mind of a 14th century peasant with absolutely zero knowledge of virology.
Right.
A rabid wolf bites your neighbor, you watch the wound heal, but weeks later, your neighbor starts convulsing, frothing at the mouth, acting entirely devoid of human reason, and violently attacking anyone who comes near them.
You aren't seeing a viral infection.
No, you are witnessing a demonic, bloodborne curse passed from beast to man.
When you synthesize the entire medical landscape, the delusions of clinical lycanthropy, the physical disfigurements of hypertrichosis and porphyria, the mass hallucinations of ergot, and the viral aggression of rabies, you realize our ancestors weren't just making up campfire ghost stories. They were desperately trying to categorize and survive a world filled with incredibly violent, inexplicable scientific phenomena.
It fundamentally changes how you view history.
It really does.
But the way we view the werewolf today has undergone another massive evolution, and it has nothing to do with science.
Oh.
I want you to think about the ironclad rules of surviving a werewolf encounter.
Okay.
You need a silver bullet, right?
Obviously.
And you have to watch out for the full moon,
Those are the rules, yeah.
Well, what if I told you that a 16th century peasant would have absolutely no idea what you're talking about?
Wait, really?
Really, the revelation here is that those ancient rules aren't ancient at all.
No way.
This strict vulnerability to silver and the involuntary transformation triggered specifically by the full moon were almost entirely invented in a writer's room in California.
Are you serious?
They were established as the definitive laws of lycanthropy by the 1941 classic Hollywood film The Wolfman.
It is staggering how quickly cinema managed to rewrite 4,000 years of deep-seated folklore.
It is.
I mean, in the ancient texts, the moon might be mentioned as atmospheric background, but it was never a strict biological trigger.
Never.
And silver was never considered a specific weakness until a screenwriter needed a dramatic, cinematic way for the hero to defeat an unstoppable monster on screen.
Hollywood didn't just invent new rules for the monster either. It fundamentally altered its psychological purpose.
Right.
The werewolf shifted away from being a pure, unredeemable evil or a damned cannibal. The modern werewolf has become a tragic hero.
You see this everywhere in modern pop culture.
Everywhere.
Look at Professor Lupin in Harry Potter, or Jacob in Twilight. The monster isn't someone who chose to commit a taboo sin.
No.
The monster is someone suffering from an involuntary condition. The werewolf has evolved into a powerful symbol for the marginalized.
Exactly.
The modern narrative uses the involuntary transformation to reflect our own contemporary struggles. It represents the difficulty of taming our inner nature, managing hidden emotional turmoil, and coping with the parts of our psychology that feel dangerously out of control.
We spent 4 millennia terrified of the wolf waiting for us out in the dark woods. Today, we're entirely focused on exploring the fear of the wolf waiting inside ourselves.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought for you to carry away from this deep dive. If ancient people used the terrifying legend of the werewolf to explain the inexplicable horrors of nature, famine, and viral disease, do we use the modern sympathetic werewolf to excuse our own flaws?
Wow.
By constantly romanticizing the beast within, are we just giving ourselves a convenient free pass for the times we let our own primal, selfish, and toxic instincts take over?
That is something to think about.
Civilization is now our everyday reality. This means that the monster in human skin, the one who might lose control at any moment, might be sitting right across from you. Are you certain he is still the person you think you know?